Welcome to the Board Game Marketing Podcast. Let's cue the intro. This is the #1 podcast to learn marketing strategies for your board game. Whether you're just starting on your first game or an experienced designer, you've come to the right place. My name is Nalin, and let's talk marketing for your game. Hi everyone, welcome to the Board Game Marketing Podcast. Today we're really lucky to have Joe Slack on the show, and I'm really excited for everything that he has to share with us today. So Joe, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Perfect. So first off, I would love it if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and also about the project before we get into the nitty-gritty details.
Sure. So I'm Joe Slack. I've been designing games for about 6.5 years now, taking it pretty seriously for the last few. Left my day job of 17 years working for a hospital almost about 2 years ago to do this full time. So now I design games, teach game design, and write books on game design full time pretty much. And just recently, I guess I became a publisher as well because I just launched successfully my own game on Kickstarter.
Perfect. Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit more about your game, how you came up with it, and what it was like to just the creation process for you?
Sure. So the game that I just finished on Kickstarter was Relics of Rajavihara. It's a puzzly solo adventure game. It's kind of reminiscent of some various different puzzle games that you'll see on either mobile or other digital games. And it was really inspired by some of the games that I used to play on NES on Nintendo, like Adventures of Lolo, Kickle Cubicle, and even some puzzles from Legend of Zelda, along with some other games like River Crossing by Think Fun, and games like that that really have a very puzzly aspect to them. And I hadn't really seen that done in a 3D tactile kind of a way. So I set out to make a game where you're basically moving around on a board, pushing around different blocks and crates and that type of thing to solve different puzzles to unlock something and move on to the next level where they would get more and more challenging over time. So that's kind of how the idea came out. And then as I was working on the game, I realized I needed to add more and more elements to keep it fresh and keep it changing. So with every level, I made the first few kind of almost tutorial kind of style where, okay, you're learning how to push the crates and jump up on them and solve the puzzles, but then they get harder and harder. And I introduced as well a nemesis that has come into this temple before you. So you're trying to kind of chase them down. But at the end of the first floor, once you've done 10 levels, they escape and you have to go down to the next floor. So I wanted to make a kind of legacy style where you'd open a new box and you get introduced to new type of blocks that do something a little different than previous ones. So it would always be this accumulation of different things and then interacting with the previous blocks or crates so that it would be this whole kind of adventure that spanned over the course of 50 levels. But at the same time, even though there's 50 levels that somebody could go through and have all those challenges of getting them through, I didn't want somebody to say, okay, I finished the game, let's put it on the shelf. So I decided to come up with something that could be more replayable after those 50 levels of the campaign were done. So that's where I really set out to create something kind of new and innovative with all the components that already existed in some of the levels. So I tried various different things, and what really ended up catching was an idea to replay some of those old levels, but with whole new challenges. So instead of going and getting the gem, now maybe you draw some cards and you have a combination of different challenges. Maybe now you have to play that level, but now there's a boulder that's in the way of doing something you normally would have. And you have to find a trap door. And you also have to drop a block on somebody. And there's this other gem that's in this even more hard to find place than the first one. So it would just constantly give these new challenges and new different combinations of them that's going to make every level different and unique every time you play it.
Wow. Yeah. I really like that idea of just adding different obstacles and new ways to replay it so that, again, the replayability is very high for a game. So that's really amazing. And I'm sure a lot of people can learn about game design from you too, from this game itself.
Well, I don't know. It's been an adventure coming up with this because it's the first ever solo game I created. And initially when I came up with it, I thought, maybe it would work as well as a co-op. And I took it to a convention in a very early stage and people were playing it and they were enjoying the puzzly aspects of it, but found very quickly that one person generally did all the moves and kind of figured things out while everybody looked around and said, oh, okay, that's how you do it. So it really just lent itself to being a solo experience. And I kind of embraced that, just like some other solo games out there did. And it just really, just really flourished in that way. Although I have seen other people play it as couples, play it with, their partner, play it with somebody else. When, they get stuck, they let somebody else play it. But it was definitely an experience trying to come up with something that was always unique and different, and the game would kind of grow and not become stagnant or end, but a way to kind of replay that game in a whole different way. So it really made, me think as a designer, how do I get past these challenges of, a game much like a video game where, you play from start to finish, you win it. Okay, well, then it's going to sit on the shelf. What can I do differently to give more to that game rather than just more expansions? I mean, I have lots of different ideas for different expansions and things that will probably come in the future, but for somebody to be able to continue to play it even after they've beat that mission, after those 50 levels. So I think that was a really important thing to make sure it was a replayable game.
I love that. I love that so much. And you mentioned too, you started off making this a co-op game and then you transitioned into a solo game. The marketing for those two different types of game probably was really different when you started approaching the marketing aspect of it. Can you talk more about what made you decide to actually make that pivot from co-op to solo game, and also how the marketing, the pre-campaign marketing changed for you?
Absolutely. So when I realized very quickly it was a solo game, I started to think, okay, well, I need to get more immersed in the solo game world. So that's when I started playing more solo games, first of all, just to get an experience and kind of find out what they were like and why people liked them. So I started playing games like Friday and Unbroken, and eventually started getting into other games like Palm Island and Maquis and Orchard and Cristallo and all these different kind of games that were, puzzly, and a lot were kind of card driven and that kind of thing. And, took that experience as well as just trying to find out kind of who are the people that like solo games and why do they like them, and getting engaged in that community. So that's when I started talking to Artem Safarov, the designer of Unbroken, who's a friend of mine, and I had played, early versions of Unbroken and bought the game when it was on Kickstarter, and talked to him about, how did you go about creating this solo experience that so many people, really became engaged with. And he told me about, getting involved with Board Game Geek a little bit, but more so with some Facebook groups. He let me know about some Facebook groups that were dedicated to solo gaming, and particularly the Solo Board Gamers group. Over 20,000 members, and these people are dedicated to solo games. They love them. They will go out and buy a game like Mage Knight that, they might spend, $70 or $80 or $100 on, just to play it by themselves. They may not even play it with, a bigger group, even though it's like a 1 to 4 player game. They just love playing that game by themselves because of the challenge of it, and because they love that game, and because they never have to find another person to play with. They can just break that game out whenever they want to. So that's when I really embraced it as a solo game, just as Artem did with Unbroken and some of these other games that, were particularly solo games, and got engaged in the community. I didn't want to just go in there and be like, oh, here's my game, buy my game, buy my game. But to really understand, what they liked about solo games, and, share my experience with solo games and ask questions and that type of thing. So I'd often go into these solo board gaming groups and, ask them about, what games did you like in solo games that weren't card driven? Because I saw there were so many of them that were card driven games. What are some examples of some good ones that aren't card driven? Because the one I was creating had cards in it, but the real motion and the real gameplay was all around like pushing the cubes and doing different things. And I'd ask them questions like, what movie would you love to see turned into a solo game experience? And it's just these really engaging experiences, and commenting on other people's posts and that type of thing, and just getting involved. And then, gradually just going in there and saying, I'm working on a game myself. Here's some like early shots of the prototype, and I'm thinking about different themes. Like, here are a couple different themes I'm thinking about. What does everybody think about? And putting like a poll out there. And that's when I saw overwhelming majority of people thought that, that kind of Indiana Jones kind of adventure theme would really work with a game like this. So I embraced that, and I went with that theme, and I went and got the artwork done with that. And then also I worked with an artist who, not only was a great artist, Tristan Rawson, who he's getting really, really involved in the board game community, and he's going to make a name for himself very, very soon because he's got a lot of projects coming out. But he was also very engaged with the community, and I love the fact that he would be working on something and he'd post it in all sorts of different forums, in game design forums, in gamer forums, and solo forums if it's a solo game, and he'd ask opinions. What do you think about this? I've come up with 2 different ideas. Which do you like better? Or what do you think about this font or this box design or whatnot? And he would engage the community himself and get feedback. And what that does is it lets people feel like they are involved in the process. So, he took an idea or a suggestion that I had, he put it into that. They feel involved in it. And also that just helps with the marketing too, because over time people are seeing, the artwork getting developed. They're seeing me, post little things about the game and the development of it. And, over the course of, 6, 7, 8 months before I launched on Kickstarter, people were seeing the process of the game from an early version to getting a theme, to getting art done for it. And they were getting involved and just seeing how it came together and getting excited about it because it was something that they thought looked really cool. So it was just that whole process of, not just going in and saying, buy my game, here's my game, and just being very spammy and promotional, but rather engaging the community, showing little snippets of things I was working on, getting feedback on it, and then kind of sharing a little bit of the excitement as things were kind of coming out. And that's kind of how, I worked on building my following for the game.
Wow, that is amazing. There's a lot of little nuggets in there that I would love to dive a little deeper into too. You mentioned that you went into very specific groups once you've identified what audience and what market your particular game would work for, and then you started engaging with it. A lot of people actually have a lot of kind of issues just going in, and they're afraid to start talking, start asking questions. What kind of advice can you give for this? Because you've done this really well across so many groups. I see your posts and lots of engagement everywhere. What's kind of a first step for people?
Well, thanks. I think one of the first things is to make sure to not just make it about yourself and make it about your game. Because as much as, I've had, success and had, built a bit of a following behind my game and everything, I've also made mistakes along the way. And not just with this game, but other places too. Like, going on Reddit and, posting something that was maybe just a touch too self-promotional, or mentioning something about myself that, got a little bit of negative feedback, or, posting in a Facebook group and having, something bounce back, or in Board Game Geek, having something bounce back and say, this is off topic, or this is considered self-promotional, or that kind of thing. So part of it's just learning kind of where you can kind of go with things and how not to overstep your bounds. But I think the key things I really did were, focus on who my audience was. So instead of going to, kind of general board game groups, or, heavy gaming groups or RPGs and that type of thing, I found the audience for solo games. And my game is a niche within a niche. It's a solo game, but it's also a puzzly type of game. So not all solo gamers are going to be into that. And that's totally fine. You have to find who your market is and who it is. But within that group, there are a number of people who like, puzzly games, video games, and are also into solo games. So when they saw this, there was, that small contingent of people who were like, wow, I've played this style of game in a video game, but I've never played it in a tabletop experience. And I love tabletop games more. I want to try this. I want to be able to move these pieces around and that kind of thing. So, getting involved in the right community, and then just engaging them in just normal ways. Just be a normal human being. Like, ask questions, comment on things. If you see people talking about different games, ask more about them. Ask what they like about the game. Post different things. Post different questions about, I'm new to solo games. What games do you recommend? Or these are the types of games that I like. What other games would you recommend? What co-op games? Like, I own these particular particular co-op games. Which would play really well solo? What's your experience been with playing some of these co-op games solo? So it's just really engaging with the people at a starting point, and then asking them questions about your game. Like, just don't go in right off the bat, your first post saying, hey, I'm working on a game. Who wants to play it? Who wants to play test my game? Like, who wants to come on Tabletop Simulator, play test my game? Like, they know nothing about you. You haven't been involved in the community. You need to build a little bit of trust, build a little bit of camaraderie between people, and then they'll get to recognize your name. And then they're a lot more open to hearing, okay, you've got a game too. Oh, okay, I want to learn more about this. And also not just putting up a post and immediately having a link right in that top post saying, here's my game and here's a link to whatever. But, just sharing something like, oh, I just got some new art back from my artist about this game. What do you guys think about this? And then posting it there. And then you'll naturally get people starting to ask those questions. Oh, this looks really cool. Where can I find out about it? Do you have an email list? Do you have a Facebook group? That kind of thing. And in that thread, then you can answer those questions. And it's a lot more natural because somebody's asking you rather than you pushing it on them. And I think you do a really great job of this too, where you have, some marketing material around about board games and board game design. And you say, I've written a post about this, who's interested, kind of thing, or just posing some questions and having people engage. And that's showing your interest rather than just, pushing things on people, just sharing a little bit and letting them come to you. It's a little bit of a slower process, but it works so much better.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question. Like, what do you do with all this conversation? And you definitely answered that, where once people start asking, you can answer with, here you can come sign up for the email list here you can follow the game here. What was your kind of process for that? Did you direct them to a landing page? Did you decide to go with a Facebook group? Was it a Discord? Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. I mean, there are so many different ways you can go about doing it. And at different stages, I kind of changed my strategy a little bit. But in general, I've learned, and I always say that email is king. So whenever you can capture an email, I think that's so much better than just, having somebody like a post, join a group, that type of thing. Because you have them on your list, you can communicate with them directly. You can have a conversation with them. You can share information. And people may not check every email that they get, and they might, gloss over some of them, but you're getting right in their email box. Whereas with, say, like a Facebook group or Facebook page or something like that, you post things, you don't know if people are actually going to see it or not. It depends on their algorithm. You don't own it. Whereas with an email list, you own it. You have power over what you say, who gets to see it, all these different things. So generally what I would try to do is get them to go to my landing page where they could sign up. And I also wanted to incentivize them with a little bit. So, you can join, you can hear about when the game's going to be launched. I'll share different things. And then once you join, I can share some print and play files. So you can try a little bit on your own. And not everybody will actually print them off or even download them or whatnot, but it's just a little extra incentive. So I think gone are the days where everybody's just willing to, just give up their email for everything, when email, was brand new and people were like, oh, I'll sign up for this, that, and the other thing. Like soon they realize that they're getting spammed by everybody or just on too many lists. So giving them something, some people call it, a lead magnet. Some people use other terms for it, but just, a reason for somebody to sign up other than just, hey, sign up for my newsletter. Like that's not super exciting, but if you can give them something, whether it's a print and play version of the game, invite them to, join something else that's exciting. So my first goal was always to try to get them to join my email list. And a tip that I learned from another podcast was combining that with a Facebook group. So instead of just a page, where you can post things, a group where you're getting people engaged. So I'd also started a Facebook group where, fans of the game or people who are interested in the game could join. And I had people, posting pictures of their own, versions of the game they made with dice or, that they printed off themselves and just sharing, them setting up levels and things like that. So just kind of a little bit more engagement with a group like that. But one trick that I was alluding to there was when somebody signed up for my email list, I had some welcome emails that, welcomed them, said, thank you for joining. Here's the print and play files, that kind of thing. But I also said, did you also know we've got a Facebook group and, people are sharing, different stories and things about the game there. And I share their information there. So here's the link if you want to join, and then I have people join there. And conversely, whenever I mention the Facebook group to anybody, or when everybody asks specifically, do you have a Facebook group for this? I get them to join there. And you can have questions on your Facebook group when people join to say like, will you accept the rules for the group, different things like that. And you can say right there, did you know there's also, this email list you can, sign up for, and you can get, I'll send you the print and play files, or I'll send you this and that when you join. And here's where you can go and sign up. So you can either get them to leave their email address there or leave a link right there where they're go to. So then you're getting double the impact. You're getting somebody to join your email list and getting somebody to join your Facebook group so they can engage in different ways so they will hopefully always see what you're doing there. And then a little later, when I was getting closer to the campaign, especially through ads and that type of thing, I was directing people more towards the actual the actual Kickstarter page, where somebody could click the button to get the notification for when it launched, because then immediately, as soon as it launched, they would get that email fired out to them saying, this game's now on Kickstarter, go check it out, that kind of thing. So I tried a couple different strategies over the course of the kind of the pre-launch for the campaign, I would say.
Wow, yeah, you really clearly identified the whole funnel flow from talking in groups and different forums and in different places, getting that engagement, driving people to the landing page, going to the email list, offering that incentive to get in the email list, and then directing to the Facebook group, and then the notify to the Kickstarter promo page for the notify me button. Wow, I love how you really clearly identify that funnel that you used.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, it's a necessary few steps that you need to put in place for sure. I mean, like I said, email is so important, but also, Facebook groups and other things can be helpful. They're more supplementary, I would say. And then, it's just really all about building that following, because definitely, this is the second game I've launched on Kickstarter. The first one is not so successful. And one of the main reasons, maybe not the right market for it, but also just not enough of a following. And I think that's the key thing. I mean, I would say this to anybody that's thinking about launching a Kickstarter in the future: build that following. Make sure that you have enough people who are super excited about your game before you launch, before you hit that button. If you don't have that following yet, you can always delay, you can always hold off, because you don't want to be one of those campaigns that you launch and, on day one you get, 5 or 10 backers, and the campaign just kind of fizzles out. Because if you don't have that momentum going in, it's going to be so much harder. You really want to try to get your game backed at least within the first 2 days, even better within the first 48 hours, and even better, like within, the first few hours or so. I mean, and you can't guarantee that it's going to happen, but if you have enough interested people, enough people who are following your page, on your email list, engaged and really looking forward to your game, they will go to your page and, drive up those number of backers, and then more people will see it. It'll become a popular project on the Kickstarter page, so more and more people will see it, and that just drives more and more people. And once you get it funded, it's a huge weight off your shoulders, and it just allows more and more people to join your campaign and feel confident about it, because they see, oh, this game's already funded. It's going to happen. It's not going to be one that I'm going to back now and I'm going to have to hang around to see whether or not it's going to fund. Like, this is going to happen, and now we're going to unlock some really cool stretch goals and some other cool things. So, I mean, there's always more and more to look forward to.
Yeah, I think this is a great segue into just kind of what marketing you did during the campaign. But before we get into that, I wanted to kind of ask you, how do you know when you're ready, right? If you had a first campaign already that you mentioned earlier, and then you have this campaign, how do you know the ready point in which you're like, okay, that's the date, I'm going to go with it, and we're going to press that launch button?
It's such a tough question to answer, and it's partially gut feel, partially data, I would say. It's almost the same thing as if you're, pitching your game to a publisher. When do you know it's actually ready to be pitched to a publisher? It's kind of when you have that feeling that you have kind of that critical mass of people who are saying, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. I can't wait to buy it. When is it available? When you're getting that kind of feedback over and over from people who are excited about the game, who can't wait, not just your family and friends, but, strangers, people you've never met before, people that you've, demoed at a convention or demoed online, who you've played at playtest events and that kind of thing. And people have graciously, signed up right away. They're saying, yeah, I can't wait. Like, let me know when this is coming out. When, you've built up that list enough, you have enough followers. And I don't know if there's an exact number of people you have to have on your email list or in your Facebook group or following you to make sure, because only, even if those people are really excited when they sign up, only a small portion of people will actually back the game. So you have to keep that in mind. But it's just really kind of that gut feeling where you're feeling pretty confident that you're going to be able to meet that minimum funding goal. And also you have to make sure to set that minimum funding goal at a level that's, both reasonable, so you'll have enough money to actually get the game made at your minimum quantity, but also So you're not going to need, $50,000 or, 2,000 backers before it's going to be made. You want to have, somewhere in the realm of, 200 to 300 backers that will allow you to make enough money to get your minimum quantity. And you really want to find a manufacturer who can do a minimum of 500. I mean, you want to do more than that, but you want to make sure that they can do a minimum of 500, even if the price is a little high. So you know that even if you only get, a small number of backers, you can still get it done and have a low enough funding goal to make it reasonable.
That is really great advice, to just set a funding goal that honestly just makes sense for the game, for the backers, for going on Kickstarter, for the type of game that you're launching. That's really great. So now when we come straight to the campaign phase, how did you keep people excited about your game? How did you continue to drive people to your page? Talk to me about some of that.
Sure. So one of the common things that a lot of people do is add stretch goals. So that, entices, new people, to see, okay, there's new things being added on. It also excites the people that have already backed the game because they see, oh, I'm getting, some component upgrades. This looks really cool. I was adding, a new level every few $1,000 that were pledged. So they could see, there's new content, there's new things kind of coming along. And, I did a lot of stuff up front, and there's some things I would do differently and stagger things a little bit more throughout the campaign, because I had almost all my reviews, right up away all on the, first day, which is helpful because that definitely helped me hit that funding goal so quickly, because, people would see reviews from Rado and Edo Baraf and Quackalope and, Bearded Meeple and all the other great reviewers that I had lined up. And, I was able to stagger a couple that came in a little late, or I actually had some people approach me, whether they were reviewers or podcasters who were looking for people to interview. So I was very lucky in that way. I didn't have a lot of things lined up. I had a couple podcasts that were lined up to talk about, about the game or about game design and that type of thing that I knew were going to come out during the campaign. But I was very fortunate because other people reached out to me, and that made me kind of also reach out to other people as well. I reached out to some solo gaming podcasts, but they were either in hiatus or they didn't do Kickstarter preview games and that type of thing. So I just kind of reached out as many places as I could in terms of podcasters, in terms of reviewers. I had some other reviewers that I wasn't even really aware of that reached out to me too. Some through my Kickstarter page even, and said, I do live streams thing. So I was very fortunate. I had two reach out to me and said, I'd love to do a live stream of the game. So I sent them copies, and unfortunately one fell ill and wasn't able to do it, but the other one was, and they had it up on Twitch, and it allowed people that either back the game to, see a little bit more about it and kind of cement their decision. And some people that were kind of on the fence as well, to watch it live or watch it afterwards. So I think some playthroughs of the game definitely helped with that. I also ran some ads. I was running ads through Google, through Facebook, on YouTube. So, various different platforms. And I didn't find a lot that really helped through the ads. I mean, I think they probably brought a little more attention, kind of brought it out in front of people more, but the data didn't really show that it really helped too much. So towards the end of the campaign, I canceled all the ads. Basically, I put them on pause, and it didn't really seem to have much of an effect. But the one really cool thing that I tried, and it was actually another creator that reached out to me, Liberty Kiefer from Cristallo, or the creator of Cristallo rather. She reached out to me and said, your game is really cool. I'd sent her a copy because I knew she was really into puzzle games and into the game design world and everything. And I just sent her a copy because I thought it would be something that her and her family would like, because she created Cristallo, and it's along the similar vein. But she actually asked me, do you want me to promote your game to my followers? And I said, we've got a good overlap between followers, so that would be fantastic. And we worked out an arrangement, and she promoted it. And that 1 to 2 days, I would say, where she promoted it, there was a huge spike, a noticeable spike in my campaign, just by having somebody partnering and mentioning my game. And I also tried this with other, solo game designers and publishers to ask them. And a couple of them did agree. They said, they would, post something about it. They said, maybe, their philosophy wasn't they would necessarily promote it, but they would, back it for $1. So everybody that was back, following them, they would see it. That's another thing too. Just anybody backing it for $1, anybody that's following them will also see it. So that's a really good strategy, even just to have somebody back it for $1. And some of these partnerships work out. Some of them, you never hear back from the person when you reach out to them. But it's definitely like kind of a secret strategy that a lot of people don't know about. But you can promote your game, but when somebody hears it from somebody they already trust, they already love that person's game, they love what they stand for, and they say, hey, here's this other really cool game, and I've played it, and I really love it, and I'm backing it. People will see that, and they'll say, oh, that's cool, I'm going to go check it out. And I had a ton of backers back me just because other people mentioned the game. So that was, a very, very strong way to promote the game as well.
Wow, you went through a lot there. That was definitely a whole list. I'm just kind of like furiously taking notes. You talked about stretch goals, talked about reviews, you talked about doing the outreach yourself for different podcasts and different channels, ads, playthrough videos, and the cross promotion thing, and just getting people to kind of recommend you. I guess people are doing that themselves after they back your campaign, have been following your journey. Wow, that's definitely a lot. What do you think you spent the most time on? What do you think kind of made the most impact for you in this phase of the marketing?
I'd say in terms of impact, the biggest one was partnerships. And I wish I had focused more attention on that. Just, other people in the game design world or in the gaming world who, thought the game was cool and wanted to share it with other people. I think I would have focused more attention on that. And I think next time I will. I'd say I didn't get quite the bang for the buck with the ads. I think it was good as a lead up to, let people see the game kind of in the pre-launch kind of stage, because, they say some people have to see something, up to 7 times before they will actually buy it. So if they see, it in an ad and they see, it being promoted somewhere else and they see a review and, all these things kind of add up and they're suddenly it's everywhere. And then they're like, oh, well, I got to go check this out at the very least. Like everybody's telling me this is really cool. But I would say, the partnership aspect or cross-promotional kind of aspect was definitely something that I would pursue more. And I think probably had the biggest bang for the buck, but also having good reviewers, and not necessarily in terms of doing that throughout your campaign, but at least from a starting point. Some reviewers charge, some are free, that kind of thing. And I only paid for one out of all the reviews that I got. Some came during the campaign, people actually reaching out to me, or just before I launched, people just excited about the game. And they just were like, I just want to play this game and try it out and help you promote it, which is really cool. But having at least one really notable reviewer that has a big following, whether that's, Rado or Dice Tower or somebody else that has a big following, even just one big reviewer. And then you can have a number of other reviewers who are equally awesome, but maybe don't have as much of a following to complement that. I think that's a pretty good strategy to have. Like, you don't have to have 20 or 30 different reviewers. You can just have 3 or 4 or 5. But if you have one of those as somebody who's a big influencer, that can make a big difference. So between that and, partnering with other people who have a similar audience, that's the important thing. Like, I'm not going to go to somebody who makes war games and say, hey, do you want to promote my game? It's not about that. It's, finding somebody else that makes other solo games, other puzzly games, other games that, they have a similar audience. And it's just always about finding that right match.
I love it. And when it comes to reviewers, a lot of people are, they have trouble making that first step. Like, hey, how do I even figure out which ones to reach out to, or even how do I even contact them? What kind of advice would you give to people just kind of getting started looking at reviewers in hopes of reaching out?
Well, I think as a starting point, any game designer should really know the reviewers out there. I mean, you're not going to get to know every single one because there's so many, but you should be already, following some, whether it's ones you've seen on other Kickstarter campaigns, just ones you watch just because you like their style, you like the games they like, that kind of thing. And that will give you the understanding of what types of games these reviewers are really excited about. Like, for example, I already knew that Rado only plays games that can be played either soloable or 2 players. Like, if your game is, 5 to 10 players, he's not going to be interested in it because he plays, mostly with his wife or games by himself and that kind of thing. So I knew that, having a solo game, this could be something he liked. I also just knew his background, that he was a video game designer before. And having a game that, you know, is almost an adaptation of a puzzly video game put into a tabletop world, I thought, you know, maybe he would be interested in this. And he just absolutely loved the idea. He saw it at first, and he started making a board himself, you know, using dice and different components. He's like, I want to try this out myself before I even get the game. So, I mean, just knowing what they like, and reaching out to others that do that same kind of game. It's just really about knowing what kind of games those reviewers like. If you have a big meaty Euro game, you want to find the reviewers that like big meaty Euro games, not the ones that only review party games, that kind of thing. So you want to have a match. So it's always about matching, you know, whether it's about finding your audience, whether it's about pitching your game to the right publisher, or finding the right reviewer with the right audience for your game, because that's the key thing. You want a reviewer that has, you know, that's going to be excited about your game, because it'll come through naturally, and that has that audience that's going to be excited about your game too. But I mean, there's different ways you can do that. I mean, it's either by, you know, following different reviewers, just checking out who's out there in the review world. There's Facebook groups with media and reviewers and content creators. Just doing searches, just even like Google search, you know, top board game reviewers, you'll find a whole list of them. And then you can, just like if you were pitching to a publisher, you're going to have a big long list, and you're going to narrow it down. You're going to have to find out who does Kickstarter previews, because not everybody does. Who needs to be paid versus who will do it for free, and what's your budget for this, and who's going to have the right audience for your game and be excited about your game. Like it's just taking the time and doing the research and getting it right. You don't want to just, you know, mass spam everybody. You want to reach out to them and say, I've chosen you because, you know, I found out about this game and this game because of you, and they're kind of similar to my game, and I knew that you like these games, so I think you're going to also really like this. I mean, you want to play to the games that they really enjoy, because it's going to come through, like I said, in their review of your game.
Oh yeah, that was really detailed, step by step of how to approach finding the right people for your particular game, and also what kind of content even to talk to them about, so that they would be more interested in your game if it's similar to something that they already have, already like, already reviewed and appreciate. So that's really, really insightful. And out of all of this, it seems like there's a lot going on. Like how long should people plan to market their game in general in the pre-launch phase before they even think about launching a campaign?
I don't know if there's a specific amount of time, but you definitely want to give yourself enough time to get everything in place and get reviewers lined up and build that following. And I mean, if your game is at the point where it's virtually quote unquote done, in other words, you know, it's playing really well, people are really excited about it, you know, there's a market for it and that type of thing. At that point, and it's been blind play tested, the rules are really solid, you know, the game functions well as a game, and it could be a good product. At that point, when you're thinking, okay, I'm going to start getting ready for this Kickstarter, I would say you need to leave yourself at least 6 months, probably more. And you're going to start out by, you know, getting that art and graphic design done if you haven't done so already, if you're kind of at that stage, because you want something that's visually appealing, that looks really good. You can't just have, you know, a simple, you know, looking prototype. It has to look really good and appeal to people. So, you know, finding that artist, lining things up and getting that all done. Finding your reviewers. You want to line up your reviewers at least like 3 months before you launch your campaign, because you need to give them enough time to, you know, look over your rules, you know, make sure it's a game for them, get the prototype sent out to them, let them learn the game, let them play the game, record, and get that review ready ahead of time. Because, you know, popular reviewers, they will have a queue of games already lined up, and you have to get into that queue, and it has to be a game that they're excited about playing too. And developing your Kickstarter page, building that following. Like, as soon as you just get to that point where you decide, yeah, I am going to run a Kickstarter, that's when you have to start marketing. You have to start building that email list, creating that awesome art, you know, sharing things online, getting involved in the community, sharing with people that people, you know, with people that are going to really like this game and it's going to resonate with, and get involved in their communities. Like I said, you know, starting out just, you know, starting conversations, answering questions, asking questions, that kind of thing. And then gradually, you know, sharing things about your game and getting people excited about that. And then, you know, asking them to join your email list or Facebook group and getting your Kickstarter page up early at least a month in advance, I would suggest, where people can at least hit the notify me button. And it doesn't mean your whole page has to be ready. You just have to have basically that first graphic of what it looks like, showing what the game's about and a little description. You don't need a lot to do that, starting page, just to get people to, sign up and hit the notification button. But even though you've given yourself, 6 months or more, if you're getting close to that date and you haven't built up that email list enough, you haven't got enough people to hit that notify me button, and you're getting close to the date, there's no shame at all in postponing. Nobody's going to get mad at you. The only person that's really set a deadline is yourself. If you're planning on launching it in June and you need to give yourself until September, nobody's going to get mad at you. If they were excited about the game in June, they're still going to be excited about it when it comes out in September, as long as you continue to engage. If you just drop off the face of the earth and don't talk to them for 3 months, and then they're like, hey, buy my game, then, that might be a bit of a problem. But as long as you're still engaging and sharing, things that are coming with art, and polling them about things and getting them involved in the community, getting them into your Facebook group, whatever the case may be, you want to give yourself enough time to build that following. And like I said, don't be afraid to postpone. Nobody's going to get upset about it. You're much better off launching when you're confident in your game. You might not be 100% confident you're going to fund, but much more confident in thinking that, I've done everything I can to build this up.
I really love that advice, that no, there's no shame in postponing, because a lot of people, like you said, kind of set deadlines for themselves, and they think that they're a failure just for not meeting that, made up deadline for themselves. And you're absolutely right. Just having enough time to get everything in place, to build that following, and have, like you mentioned earlier, have people literally ask you, when can I back the game? Where can I back the game? When can I just, support you? That, there's really no shame in just getting to that point, for sure.
Absolutely. And
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the thing about deadlines rather, deadlines are important. I mean, if you just create this game and say, oh, one day I'll put it on Kickstarter, you probably never will. So you definitely do want to set yourself a deadline, but don't think that that's, completely carved in stone. And if you're not ready to launch, if your page is not ready, if you don't have the following or whatnot, there's no point in launching until you're actually ready and have everything in place. If you're still waiting on reviewers and they're going to be another few weeks, you don't want to launch without all this stuff. And as well, even if you are confident and you launch and it doesn't fund the first time, you can cancel your project. There's no shame in canceling your project, retooling things, getting feedback from people who backed or who were thinking about backing, and coming back. And, maybe, your shipping prices were a little bit off. Maybe you have to pare things down. Maybe you need better art. Maybe there's other things. You need to take that feedback, and then you can relaunch. There's so many games, so many examples of games that have relaunched, a couple months later, 3 months later, 6 months later, and been successful the second time around. So there's no shame in, pulling the plug and just retooling and coming back and launching again stronger when you have that following. And those people that backed it the first time will probably back it again because they were excited about it the first time.
I love it. I love it so much. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all of these insights about your campaign and about marketing in general with us. This is really, really insightful. Thank you so much, Joe.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So before you go, I wanted to ask, if people wanted to find out more about the game, or just look you up, find you, learn from you, where can they go?
For sure. So if you're a game designer and are interested in learning more about game design and, my processes and that type of thing, I have a weekly blog and course and books and everything. So you can check out all of that on boardgamedesigncourse.com. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about Relics of Rajavihara, if you want to check out the campaign page just to see how I've set things up, how I structured stretch goals, and how I went through the process of designing a page that could be successful and that type of thing, you can check out crazylikeabox.com and just click on the link for Relics of Rajavihara, and you can learn more about it there.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time, Joe.
Oh, thanks again.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Board Game Marketing Podcast. For daily tips and advice, find us in the Board Game Marketing group on Facebook. See you next week.